Are you an entrepreneur who desires to grow your business, to live the life that you've always desired? And yet, if you were being honest, you feel like you're stuck in the mud and your wheels are spinning, getting the same result day after day, year after year? Well, if so, I want to invite you to join us today because we're going to unpack how do we move from just going from desires we have to and not settle for a life by default, but how do we build a life by design? How do we build a business by design so we can thrive in every aspect of our life, including our business? Relate to what I'm saying. I want to invite you to join me for the conversation today with my friend Yesung, who he and I have the same coach. Shout out to Omar out of Las Vegas. And so today we're going to be talking about how do we go to the next level and grow our business to have a thriving business that we desire. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, for having me. I'm super excited to be here talking with you, and let's get into it. So, yeah, Chris, you and I met through Omar's Inner Circle program, which again, I think it's so fantastic to be part of. Um, what was your journey to reaching that point of saying, hey, content is going to be the thing? And then because of that reason, like I have my reasons, you have your reasons, and then that's how we landed in Omar's program, right? So I think it'll be cool if we sort of unravel that and then,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think that'll be fun.
yeah.
I'm reminded that what I resist will persist, and what I embrace, God will give me grace. The reason that's important to me is because I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. I've been an independent contractor. I've had my own business all these years. And one of the changes that I've seen in the industry of business is social media, right? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of these things that didn't used to exist prior to what, 2007, 8, 9, 10. And so for me, one of the things I've been resisting, just being transparent with you, is social media. I would say things like this: it's not for me. That's for the younger generation because, I'll be 42 years of age this year. And I would say that's for the younger folks. I would resist it. And yet I started to think to myself, man, like, where are people going? Even myself, I find myself on social media. It's capturing my attention. And Omar, our coach, we have a mutual coach, helped me understand that the world is full of millions and or billions of people, however many. And surely there's people out there that they would choose to work with me, but they don't know I exist.
Mm.
And so I just got to a place where it's like, you know what? Instead of coming up with all these reasons, I'm going to try to avoid social media. What if I just embrace it? What if I start to learn about it? Like, what is personal brand? Well, come to find out, it's just personal brand is simply what comes to mind when people see or hear my name. And so I just for me, hiring our mutual coach, Omar, was a step for me to stop resisting social media, doing videos and having an online presence. It was time for me to embrace that instead of resist it.
When you said you were 42, I honestly thought when I met you at Omar's Inner Circle, I thought you were like 35 or something like that. So
Man,
like,
I'll
what's
take
your
it.
secret?
I'll take it.
So that's really cool. Yeah, for me, like I was on the journey of investing. So that was the time when I had my first baby, and something inside of me, like a fear of just like, oh, I gotta provide for this little baby that just was born, right? And then I got into real estate, like buying homes to flip it and buying homes to do Airbnb or adding units. And then I realized, hold on. And by the way, my career is as a teacher. So I've been a teacher for a decade, close to a decade, teaching math and comp sci. So I'm like, math is not mathing here. Like I'm leveraging 1 million only to make extra $500. And I'm from Canada. Those of you listening, I guess you would know Canadian real estate is much more inflated. And so I was like, I told my honey, like, this is crazy. We're leveraging 2 million to make what, extra thousands? Like, that's not working. Let's find the next asset, right? And so I'm like, what's the next best asset? In my opinion, it was the digital asset, hence making videos and so on. And I had my fair share. I was pretty confident, like, I can do it by myself. So I spent a couple thousands before, like, buying the gears that I thought. And did I look terrible? Like I still looked so bad. And then when Omar came, he's like, "Do you want to be drippy crispy?" I'm like, "That sounds so cool. What is even drippy crispy, right?"
Yeah, that just sounds cool.
Yeah, and so that's my little journey. So getting in there, and yeah, that's how I found Omar, and here we are talking
So
about
from teacher, you had your first child, you were a math teacher, had your first one, and then you felt you were talking about like being a provider for your family.
Mm.
Why was investing important to you?
Well, because the math wasn't adding up. And what I mean by that is both my wife and I had a good, medium salary, but we know we couldn't get ahead. And all we could do is just pay our bills monthly. And so I said, we have to do something else that allows us to get more income in some sort of way. And investing was the most available option that I had. And so that's what I sort of tinkered into it. And, I think everyone is scared at first, but then when you see the upside, for me, it was a six-figure earning when I was like, if I fix this house in about X months and then just sell it, like I'm able to make six figures. And I've never made that much in a couple of months, right? So that's what got me really started in saying that. But I realized it's just too much leverage in one end.
I see. Okay. Hey, if you're out there watching and you're at a spot where, in order for you to get to the next level, you're going to have to either maybe invest in real estate or invest in yourself, type in the word invest in the comments. Would love to hear from you.
Yeah. And I love what you said about the other side of thing that you've been avoiding and pain. For me, actually, the content media side was a bit natural for me, and maybe it's because I grew up with it. I was just fooling around with the camera, and it's so funny, like how when I was even in it, I was still struggling. And I think one of the reasons why I ended up hiring a coach was because for me to build a business, and that's our topic today, right? We're trying to build a thriving business. I wanted to work with somebody that could understand that I'm a stubborn guy. I would try my ways, and then when I fail, I will probably like position myself to receiving their critiques, right? And and so yeah, it's been an interesting one in that I thought I still had to figure it out after hiring Omar, but I wasn't doing the things that he was telling me to do. And now I'm at a place like I'm a bit more seasoned in terms of getting a coach. I don't know about you, but I've never been coached outside of just school. Like I haven't had a personal coach. And so that's one of the reasons why I've invested because I want to fast track, but also avoid the mistakes. Yeah, to getting there.
That's good. I mean, especially if we're stubborn, and usually if we're entrepreneurial at all, like we want to get experience. We want to figure it out on our own. And yet I appreciate what you're saying, because I too, one of the advantages of hiring a coach, investing in having a coach, is that, man, we're giving Omar so many shout outs. We need to get an affiliate link from him.
I know, right? Like put it in the chat.
Yeah, exactly. Omar is not sponsoring this video.
No, no.
And yet my point is when it comes to investing in a coach, it's number one, an accelerator. So I've discovered that I could go further faster learning from someone else that's done it before. And number two, I could avoid the the mistakes where they've been doing it. I could learn from them. Therefore, even though I may be stubborn, I don't have to learn everything the hard way, because there's always a cost of learning things the hard way.
And in my flipping days, I was the one. By the time I arrived home, we had an hour of dinner and I was with my parents at that time because we bought the house. We're not living there. And so I would put in sweat equity from 6 p.m. all the way up to 1 a.m. saying, I did the renovation. I'm like, I was so miserable, right?
Yeah.
I realized, man, this is not how you scale a business. And nor did I know anything about business because I'm coming from just the 9 to 5 mentality, right? But I'm curious, Chris, how did you decide? And we'll this will be the last touch point on like a coach, and then we'll sort of go on. But like, how did you decide to say Omar's my guy? And I think some people are also looking for a coach, but they're lacking some thought process as to discern and really jump in. So I want to hear your story on that.
Yeah. So I was listening to Myron Golden on YouTube. So Myron Golden was the connection point to Coach Omar. And I then I saw a video where Omar was interviewing Myron on his podcast. And so I double clicked on that, watched it, and I thought, wow, I like this other guy too. I like this guy, Omar. And so I binged some of his material, and you know how it is online, it starts following you around.
Yeah.
And so Coach
Algorithm's
Omar
got
had
you.
his content to cash challenge.
Mm.
And so I thought, okay, $100, what do I have to lose? I'm going to jump into that. I think it was actually less than 100. And so I jumped into that. I'm like, man, you know how it is. You ever had it to where what somebody is saying, you could just tell like it's resonating with you, like on a soul level where you just feel it on the inside. It's hard for me to even describe, man. But after spending the 5 days virtually in the classroom with Omar, I'm like, man, I like this guy. What he's saying and how he says it resonates with me. And I think I can learn from anybody, meaning that even if somebody has different values than I do, I can learn from them. And yet, one of the things I appreciate about Coach Omar is that he and I had some similar values, right? Meaning that he mentioned that he's a believer, he's a follower of Jesus, and come to find out, he's a pastor. He's the legacy pastor at his church. And so I was able to find him online at, what is it, the City Church or something like that. I went and watched
Pretty
one of
late
his
church,
sermons.
yeah.
Like, I want to see what this guy's like. And then at the end, he gave the opportunity to join him in his inner circle. And that's where I'm like, oh, am I willing to play at that level? So that's a little bit of my journey. What about for you? How did you cross paths with Omar?
Yeah, I mean, before joining, and I'm very frugal as an Asian person would. It's like all Asians, I well, not all Asians. I wouldn't stereotype, but I was frugal. And what I seen across YouTube, it was he had a course for like $49. It doesn't exist anymore. I tracked back, but it doesn't exist. But before I bought it, he had one free video which talked about how you can use your phone just to, if you shoot like this with this settings, it's gonna look like this. I was like, wow, he explained it very elegantly and it was really nice. He talks in a very gentle way. So I'm like, I'm gonna buy the $49 course. And I love binge watching and like learning because I'm such a nerd at when it comes to learning. And that 7 hour course, or like he had tons of modules, but I went through it in about 3 to 4 hours because I was X speeding, like 2X replay speed. Just going through it. I'm like, wow, this is great. And then the next day, ding, here comes an email. Hey, I'm doing this thing called a challenge. And this was, I think it was his first time. He had series of beta coaching, and then he's started the challenge. And so I got in, and he made the offer. I got so much value, and I told my wife, I'm like, honey, stocks, that phrase like buy in early and then like sell high. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's this guy named Omar. Like he's done a lot of things here with Think Media, and then I think where he's gonna go is gonna be really good. I think we should, invest. I should invest, right? And yeah, she was like, I believe what you're trying to do, so I'll support you. And I mean, I didn't have the means to pay up all front, and I had the divided finance plan. But I was so glad, like in a full year's time, now that it's a full 12 months that I've already been in it, it's like I would make that trade any day. And so he has bought me over his free, I think what you call that, lead magnets, right? Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like getting caught up in the web because it's one of those things to where now that you asked me a good question. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, I had a buddy, a good friend of mine in Houston, who said, "Hey, Chris, check out this guy named Omar," where it was all these different things where it's like, man, I got exposed to him. And the thing about one of the neat things about social media is that you can learn at whatever pace works for you. Meaning, if you want to deep dive and really learn about something or get a feeling for someone, you could do that easily by clicking online. And what's fascinating about that is Omar, he was probably like, what was he doing when we were watching him online? Well, he was probably with his beautiful family. He was on the golf course. Who knows what he was doing? But what he wasn't doing when I was watching him, he was not behind the camera when I was watching his YouTube videos. So it's amazing the leverage that we could have as a result of being more findable online. I do have a
Mm,
question for you. So you said
yeah.
that you discovered Coach Omar, and you decided to invest. Who or what were you investing in? Looking back,
That's a great question. It's a difficult concept to be like, aside from school, if my mom and dad heard that, it's like, wait, you didn't pay that to school, but a person? It's like, hello, like, what is this? A real estate? I think the next closest thing is a real estate license teacher, because they were always saying real estate is the way to go, because they know I couldn't be that Asian son that could fulfill the Asian prophecy, which is like a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. And I actually studied music as my background, but I understood, like that's one thing to try to leverage, right? And so, and you're in real estate, right, Chris?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll use this as an example. Many people, or most people, when they buy houses, do they usually have the funds to buy the house?
Very rarely in our market, about 50% of buyers are cash buyers, which is one of the highest percentage I've come across.
Wow.
Traditionally, people usually leverage someone else's money, aka get a loan.
Loan from the bank, right?
Right.
But the reason they would buy it is because not only does it bring great memories, but they know that houses appreciate because they're an asset, right? And so what I've come to realize is like, wait, I myself, I'm so important, and everybody that's listening, they would also say the same thing. Like they themselves are important, but why aren't they investing in themselves? And that was a conversation I was having. It was really difficult to spend money for other people, especially my wife or my family members. But when it came to myself, I was like, that's really hard to do. And I figured for me to actually change, it's similar to what you said. I have to go to the other side of discomfort. And so when I made that decision, I realized it's a decision well made because I know I'm appreciating in value because I've now gotten this life skill of creating content, but listening to what the market is saying so that I can create an offer that makes most sense, right? So
What was challenging about investing in yourself?
challenge was the money part. And for me, I couldn't really verbalize it until Myron said, it's like, you have a spending problem, or like you have problems spending your money because you've exchanged your time for money. And so when I don't use my money towards something that's going to be like the typical goods, like a house, something that's appreciating, or stocks maybe in the further down the road, in my mind, it was like it's wasting, right? So which means it's wasting my life that I've sort of contributed to this amount of accumulation that I had, right? And it wasn't until he said it that way, it's like, oh gosh, you're right. Like, and I'm sure if you watch Myron too, like he talks about $1 million as if it's nothing because he's now elevated himself to realize money is not a finite thing, and the concept of money is not small for him. It's abundance, right? And so that was one of the things that was challenging for me. Yeah.
Can you put your finger on like what shifted from a mindset perspective in you that caused you to think differently and then as a result invest in yourself?
Yeah. Great point. The point I said enough is when I finished the renovations, like the flips, because I was I was working physically, my muscles couldn't expand anymore, and I said, "Why am I?" And my wife said to me once, like when I returned home, she's like, I never asked you to do this. I never asked you to go out and make more money. I just want you to be at home with our family and then just build memories. Why are you doing that, right? And I think it was actually those moments together when she said, like, why are you doing this? And as well as me just over hustling and grinding to feel like, you're right, this is not the best way. So let me find another way that's more, it's working for me rather than working against me. And before the call, I think you were mentioning, I was asking you a question like, what exciting things are you working on, Chris? And I think you said about like, I'm now switching from I think you said these words, hustle and grinding, to now
Yeah,
ebb and flowing. Like,
sure.
yeah, what how does that look like for you now? Like maybe you had a transition phase as well.
Man, so I'll give you an example. This past weekend, we had our men's group at church. We meet once a month on Saturdays, and it was an interesting topic. I was excited to go there just because I saw what the title was, and it was about working hard. And I think working hard, okay, so number one, what does that mean? When I think about working hard, I think about using my muscles over time in order to earn money. And working hard, I think that I mean, there's two sides of everything. Working hard can be a good thing to do if effort is the challenge. Meaning, if I'm just being what the Bible calls a sluggard or lazy, then it would behoove me to work harder, work more diligently. And yet it could reach a point where, like what you just shared, that what do we do? This is what I asked the group. What do we do when working hard is not working?
Mm,
Because the most valuable thing
mm.
is not money, it's what?
Time.
It's time.
Yeah.
Time is infinitely more valuable than money. And with working, if we think about working hard, if I'm working with my muscles, are they a limited resource or unlimited? Well, eventually my muscles will get tired and give out, no matter how fit and strong I am. So that's limited. And then also time, it's limited. So one of the challenges can be is that if I'm using my muscles over time, it's always going to produce a limited opportunity. A limit. I'm always going to be limited if that's my approach. And now I forgot what your original question
No,
was.
I think it's great about like
Hustle and
now,
grind versus
yeah, hustle
working hard.
grinding to now coming back to ebb and flowing.
Yeah,
Do you find that content is helping you like is able to get to that space of like ebb and flowing?
it is. And I'll give you an example. Over the past, I don't want to exaggerate, about 6 weeks, I just had this happen earlier this week.
Yeah, yeah,
I had now with my real estate business, I run a referral based business. What do I mean by that? I'm not running around trying to find the next person to work with. I stay in touch with people that I've worked with almost going on 2 decades now. So I'm not like a lot of people in the industry, meaning that they take care of somebody, they sell them a house, and then they ignore them until that person is ready to buy or sell another house. That's not how I roll. I used to do business that way. Then I got my first business coach that changed everything back in 2015, 2016. And so I
wow.
really focus on staying in touch and building relationships with people that already like, know, and trust me. And I like, know, and trust them. It's mutual. And so when I think about hustling and grinding, I think back in my earlier years of business where I was working 7 days a week, sun up to sundown, knocking on doors, doing all these things out there, spending the majority of my time and energy to meet random strangers, people that didn't even know me. And I was ignoring all of the people I have already worked with that desired to hear from me, for me to stay in touch with. So when I think about hustling and grinding, I'm thinking about like the amount of hours I'm working and almost in our industry. I don't know if they have this up north in Canada, and yet they call it commission breath. If you don't know what that
Yeah.
means, just imagine like a car salesman that is just hungry to put a deal together.
Mm,
So that's what I'm when I think about hustling and grinding, I think about trying to convince somebody now's the time versus finding people that they tell me now is the time. Attracting. I another thing, and then well, the other thought on this one, the difference between hustling and grinding and being in flow or ebbing and flowing is going to be attracting, meaning that I trust that there's people out there that will work with me. All I need to do is either number one, stay in touch with them, or number two, be more findable by them, meaning that I have an online presence. One of the, back to that original example of I've had some of my past clients tell me, one was just this week, and this is what I started with, is that a client just this week said, "Hey, Chris, I've been seeing your videos on Facebook," meaning that I haven't started to track the math on it. And yet I could tell you this, that one of the ways that I'm staying top of mind for people is that they're seeing me on social media because I'm no longer resisting it.
mm. That's so good. And I think I can share a similar story of
Please do.
like, yeah, it's like content, maybe for some people may come across as like, well, I don't want to be a noisy person or like, especially as again, coming back from the Asian culture, it's like man, when we have something, even if it's a good thing to celebrate, we don't celebrate it that like big. It's like for my family, it was just like, just, but then I would always, like, if I had an offer, I try it once and then it's like, oh, it didn't work. And I just like take it away and sort of like put it away. And yeah, it's funny because like I know you're building a business, I'm building a business, our audience is probably building their business. And content for sure, I think everybody knows, and I think you'll agree, everybody knows it's a really important piece in the business going forward, but they're not executing it. And for me, the decision part was understanding the word decision. It's like I had my teaching job, and I quit because of Airbnb, because Airbnb allowed me to sustain that income. But then I was just doing an agency work, Airbnb, and doing a little bit of dabbling here and there. And I realized, man, I'm not going anywhere. So I made a decision to cut off other things and just focus on that one thing that I want to do great, which is now going into the content and business side of coaching. And so when that decision was made for me, like showing up on camera was more intentional. And I don't know about when that was like a thing for you to be like, maybe what you shared was exactly that.
It's causing you to go because you could invest in real estate. Like I too have flipped properties,
Mhm.
and that's something that I actively pursue. And yet you could hire somebody to do that, meaning you hire the guy to swing the hammer to do the renovations.
Right.
What's causing you to move more into having a personal brand online? I'm curious.
Well, exactly when you said before about how if I'm trying to work my muscles against time,
Yeah.
it's limited.
Right.
And I was like, what's the only other thing that can multiply what I want to think about and building authority about minds? And I think as a preface, the reason why I went to teaching programming is because I actually I had a desire to help students be able to create softwares that they could sell to the marketplace. And I've been trying for that about close to a decade, but the time was too short. There's too much politics, and I realized it just wasn't going anywhere. And so, for me, content was the next best frugal things I can work on to sort of like get to the next level. And I know content has attracted me a lot of interest thus far, but my issue right now in my business, and maybe you can help me out if you have any tips, is like I'm trying to get my first batch of clients to give them the results that they're looking for. I'm trying to serve a batch of clients that they're looking for help in terms of scaling their business, overcoming the fears of being on camera, and like be able to build a personal brand around that. So it's like a content as well as business aspect. But yeah, it's sort of things. I'm actually copying Omar's playbook of trying to run a 5-day challenge, because what I wasn't really good at was trying to create an environment. Yes, I've been on calls like one on one. They're asking, "Oh, what does your business do?" And I tell them it's going to be this much, but I haven't painted the picture of the desire and the payoff. And I just only talked about the technical things. And so, yeah, that's where I am in terms of content and how I'm trying to leverage it on in my business. Yeah.
So I'm curious, describe to us who is your ideal client? And the other part is I'm curious, like, what is it you do extraordinary well? Like your some people call it a gifting or a talent, an area of strength that you might have.
Yeah. Great question. And to answer that, my greatest strength is analysis over the topic. So analyzing businesses in this case, right? And I'm able to craft ideas and offers to how it can increase your leads through content or without content. And then also like how to cross sell or upsell and things of that nature. And learning from Myron and Omar, it's like because I've also participated in this high value offer, right, of like a 15K per year program, I'm able to also see like, oh, there's a market like this of a premium valued offer, right? And so that's who I'm targeting. It's high level entrepreneurs that are looking to get the transformation that they're looking for in scaling their business and also looking like really great online. And I think Omar is the perfect example of why I hired him as a coach, because he was doing exactly those things that I was looking for.
And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
May I share a story that's part of the reason why I'm interested in having a presence online?
Yes, yes.
So I wrote my first book almost exactly a year ago. And once a week, I've sent Amazon so much money as we all have, right?
Mm.
Buying products from Amazon. And the idea that once a month, I think it's around, it's always the last week of the month, like the 25th of every month, Amazon started sending me a check as a result of online sales of the book I wrote. So I had a cadence of checking once a week. And usually when I check, it shows down like the countries where book sales are from. And usually it was always Canada and the United States. Well, this one particular time, I had to do a double look at the screen because there was another country, Poland, out of all places, showed up. And I was so intrigued by that. I thought to myself, how in the world did somebody in Poland come across my book on Amazon from Midwest United States? What's going on in their life that they would double click on it and buy a book called The Path to Purpose: How to Fulfill and Discover Your Purpose in Life? And I thought to myself, I wish there was a way that I could refund that person their money and just interview them to get to know them and learn about what's going on in their life. And so it occurred to me, and this is the point I want to highlight. Across the world, what I learned by that is potentially across the world, there is people that I could serve, that I could help. And yet, right now, everything that I'm doing is hyper local, meaning all of my clientele is here in the Kansas City area. And so it became once again it was one of the final things that led up to me saying, you know what, I choose to have a personal brand and have an online presence because it is possible. And the person in Poland really helped me to just take more seriously that there's people across the world that I could help, I could serve. If I can get over the limiting belief I have, if I can just get over myself. What do I mean by that? I mean, I don't like how my voice sounds online. I want to be good and look right all the time. And sometimes I mess up and don't come across the way that I want, or
Yeah.
I don't like how I look online. Those are some of the things that I just had to get over in order to better serve potentially people across the world.
Mm, that's so good. I
Mm.
mean, I I can't imagine how excited you would be when there's more people like later on as it scales. There's different countries, people from all over. Like that's basically a globalization of your business, right?
It's crazy to think about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you find in your circle, people that don't have content, that they're struggling the most to? Because I think everybody business owners would know, like, yeah, like content brings more opportunities, right?
It sure can.
What have you found in your circle that's people are struggling with the most? Like that first big domino that maybe needs to be pushed in order to release.
I mean, I think it's the same thing that I struggle with, wanting to look good all the time and be right, and a
Mm,
hyper focus on me,
yeah.
meaning that my focus is me and my comfort. It's like once I was able to get more focused on now the person, I don't know if it was a man or a woman, and it doesn't matter. And yet the person in Poland is the placeholder. That's a lot of P's. The person from Poland is the placeholder for somebody that I can serve if
Mm,
I care enough to get over my comfort zone and get online and be more findable for them. And so
mm,
I think it's the same thing that I think the person out there listening that's not choosing to be on social media and to have a online presence, they probably are hyper focused on wanting to be right and sound good and look good. And, that's just, I guess we just have to be vulnerable or care enough about someone else
mm,
to get out of my own way and serve them.
that's so good. You're right. Like people know and I think I'm taking this from Christo and Omar having the podcast together. It's like Chris was saying, like everybody is putting up a front in one way or another. So then, like, how do you build a personal brand? And I think he said something along the lines of like, just go see therapy. And what he meant by that is like, you need to do an internal dive on like what's going on. And for me, what's been interesting is like, I have brought the hustle and grinding culture up to this year, but the Lord really stopped me in January. He was like, yes, if you want to grow and scale, you cannot bring that. You have to internally literally change. And with the grace of like having other members that reach out to me to help me in how I was thinking through things about self inadequacy, running my business out of anger and fear and like desperation,
Yeah.
it's completely flipped my world upside down. And now understanding, no, I need to be running the business out of serving people, wanting to serve people rather than trying to make the money. Like you said, commission breath, right? And I wonder, has faith played a role in the way you do your business, the way you do content?
I mean, without a doubt, because faith is centered to from my perspective, there's no aspect of my life that is not impacted by my faith because it's central, it's core. And so I would say, yeah, absolutely. Like one of the things, like if we were to unpack more of what I was attempting to describe as far as like getting over my preference and care more to serve others, like the person from Poland,
Mm,
really what that is it at its root, it's seeing the value in other people. So much so I'm willing to give up personal preferences and put a higher priority on serving someone else potentially across the world. I think that's faith with feet, meaning faith in action. I mean, the Bible says faith without works is dead. So if my life, I believe it is as I continue to increase in age over time, the byproduct of being a follower of Jesus is loving his people more.
mm,
It's the central message Jesus had. He summarizes all of the Old Testament law, but love others as yourself and love God. So meaning that the more I live my life, there should be a fruitfulness that looks like me loving others more.
mm.
What's your input on that? Because I know faith is cornerstone in your life.
Yeah. And the reason why I was drawn to Omar as a coach too, it was because he exemplified that faith based, right? And for me, I was always looking for, it's like, yes, I go to church on Sundays, but when I come home, like there's a disconnect of like how we think about money, how we think about finance, how we think about to continue to grow our wealth, right? And it wasn't until really like Omar and Myron. And
Okay.
so I'm coming to realize like, wow, there's so many biblical things that Myron and also Omar are sharing that it's sounding and it's biblical, but also it applies to business, but it applies to the point of like getting wealthy. Like wealth is one of the inheritance that we should be pursuing after as a child of God, right? And that link of trying to bridge the gap of loving God and being able to make a lot of money and still be a great servant in the marketplace. That essence is what I'm trying to like uncover in my current self right now in my journey as I'm really starting this. And so, yeah, I really get like, I've just talked to so many people in church. It's like, I know God loves me, but I'm in so much struggle. And I'm like, yes, and I know this is not supposed to be it. We're supposed to be living out of abundances. And I'm not saying like it's gonna happen overnight, but there are some biblical principles and business acumens you need to gain. And now the content stuff, because how else are you gonna do your business, right? And so
Right. Yeah.
that's my take so far.
Man, I'll tell you what, when it comes to financial literacy, especially for us believers as follower of Jesus, it is a main topic I am the most interested in.
How come?
So I've been doing some Bible studies and I've been digging into it to get some answers myself because it's one of those things. Number one, it's like there's one of the desires I have is imagine a local church, meaning Sunday mornings, where we get equipped, meaning what does it look like to love your wife well? What does it look like to be a husband, to be a father? What does it look like to be a businessman in the kingdom of God? Like those are some topics that rarely do I hear much about. And so I have a desire, number one, to go on the journey myself and start asking some better questions to Jesus, like, okay, God, I understand this person's opinion, but what do you say about this? Because as a follower of Jesus, I desire, like, I just choose for his opinion to outweigh, meaning more important than anybody else's opinion, because everybody has an opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
So then in your business now, I think you mentioned some things about like the things that you're working on now that you've hired a coach and you've gotten the content place as well as figuring out your message. Like what exciting things are you working in your business in the coming weeks or months? Yeah, and you talked about your book and other member I think Legacy by Design, was that right?
Yeah. So there's a few things that come to my mind. Number one, leverage.
Mm,
Being honest, traditionally in all my years of being an entrepreneur, I've let my ego and pride get in the way. And this is what I mean by that. Imagine someone that says something like this. Well, in order for it to be done right, I have to do it. It just the mindset of that I have to be involved in order for it to get done. That's always going to create that's always going to be limited, right? Because I could only be in one place at one time.
mm,
And so one of the seasons that I'm in is learning to lead a team well, to
mm,
build a team, to go in business with others, to create opportunities for others. So an example would be about 2 months ago, I hired my oldest daughter, Shaylee, who's in college right now, and she still lives at home. She'll be 20 this year. And she's a lot like her mom. What she does, she's going to do extremely well, and she's into the details. And so I hired her by faith about less than 2 months ago, and I'm handing off as much as I can administratively to her, and she's doing a phenomenal job. So going into business with others, creating opportunity for others,
for
and
leverage, right?
then content creation, meaning courses, webinar, as a result of obsessing over like, okay, what is the challenge that I see a lot of people have that I can relate to, that I've discovered some things and that I think I could help them get the result they desire. And so those are some of the areas I've been going deep in and really putting some energy and focus towards. What about
Mm.
for you?
Yeah, that's fantastic. When you mentioned you hired your daughter, it's like my son's only 5 right now. So I'm
Okay.
always like, man, I wonder when I can be successful so that I can hire this guy and just to see what it would look like. It's like and then let people know I hired my son. But for me, what I'm working on now is creating that experience. And I think you and I both know having to work with Omar, and we're talking about Omar so much, but he's exemplified it so well is creating the environment that understands how you work and how you're helping people solve their problems. And so I'm doing my 5 day challenge myself. I actually don't have a word for what to call it yet, but it'll be definitely in the realms of helping people create offers and maybe a high end premium offers. And yeah, so it's in the phase of being created at this moment. But the one of the things that I'm struggling is going back to my older way of thinking, which is like, man, I want to make it perfect. It's like the content side. It's like I want to make it perfect before I show it to anybody. But I know that it's not true. But if I'm always just by myself, I find that it's difficult. And so I try to talk it over with my wife or some other friends that also talk about business, just letting them know it's like, what if I said this? This is pretty cheesy. I don't know if you like dad jokes. I love dad jokes, but like whenever I bring an idea to my friend, they're like, that's terrible. Like you should not call it that. You should not call your business Yesung School of Business and Content. That's too long. It's not that original. So yeah, that's it's the creation side of doing at this
Yeah.
moment.
So if you were just to choose a name to have version 1.0, meaning the first attempt out there, what name would you go with right now if you had to decide?
Oh man, that is such a hard question because I was working the whole day yesterday trying to come up with the name. Let's let's call it messy to making money. 5 day challenge. Just do it messy, but get it done so that you at the end of the 5 days, the result is that you know how to make money online. You know how to make the first couple hundred, maybe thousands of dollars
Yeah.
online. Just existing with so an example that comes to mind is like you have a book, right? and and this is taking Myron's way of thinking as well. Um, you're using that book I'm assuming as like a lead magnet, which means people are buying the book to become a customer. Because I think what Myron explained was like it's easier to sell to a customer rather than a prospect. And so he does this math, and I'm sure you've seen the math as well, like the $1 million equation or something. And those are some of the things like when somebody comes to me, it's like, oh, can you help me with my business? I would, yeah, actually, those are some of the things that I would ask. Like, are you interested in writing a digital like copy of a book or some sort of giveaway that you can actually put a price on it to get more leads? But yeah, I digress. Yeah.
That's good. Well, and I think that's one of the benefits of coaching or consulting others, working with other people, is that in order to do that in an authentic manner, we have to be on the journey ourselves. So imagine that here it is, I consult business owners, and yet what if I didn't pay to have a coach myself? How could I ever, with confidence and authenticity, charge somebody else and say, oh, it's important that you have a coach that you pay, especially when we're talking higher ticket things, not
Mhm.
just a few hundred, but
Right.
we're talking thousands of dollars potentially. So I think that's one of the benefits of being a coach is we get to walk it out first.
Mm,
So how could I ever consult someone to write a book if I haven't written a book? How
mm,
can I talk about investing in a coach if I have not done that or I'm not doing that? So
mm.
it's like part of that is just earning the right to be a coach. We have to be coachable ourselves and be on that journey. Otherwise, it's I don't think it's authentic, man.
Yeah, that's so good. And a couple of my friends in my network, they
Mhm.
always, and I even had the conversation today before hopping on the podcast, and they were like, I all the information that I get from YouTube is good enough, right? And I'm like, actually, you're correct, but you're partly correct in that. Like, and the question was, they know that I'm going to another inner circle, like a mastery day with Dan Martell, and I showed the receipt to break the limiting belief and to start a conversation. And some people are like, what are you getting for that price, right? And I think there needs to be a distinguishment. It's like, yes, free information is good, but when you pay, and I think you know the phrase, like, if how did it go again? It was like, if you pay, you pay attention, or something like that, right?
More you pay more attention.
Yeah, you pay more attention, and I think it's really the case for my experience. Is like, I paid because I was not only in lack, but I wanted to pay attention to become, and I also want to attract the different buyers that would buy outright like that, rather than be like a pen. Can I call it penny pincher? Is that
Sure,
a
yeah.
phrase? Yeah, yeah. And
Sure.
so,
Yeah, good call on that one.
so in your, I know our topic here today is about like building a business intentionally, business by design rather than business by default. Can I share one thing that would sort of help the audience members if they're starting out a business or they have been a business owner for the longest time but they're still
Please
struggling?
do. Absolutely.
The thing I would say is this: go find yourself a coach who is at the stage of where you want to be and they're already doing the things that they're doing. And if that's out of your range, find somebody in that network that's maybe just a below in that, maybe the price point or like the experience, so that at least if that person is a couple steps ahead of you, you're still moving forward rather than being still in where you are currently.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. If you could share with my audience one of the things that would help people that are struggling with analysis paralysis or um, yeah, starting their personal brand. Do you have any suggestions from?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely have some input on that. I would say this: if you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, and you're building your own brand or business, and yet if you're doing it online, watching other people's videos all by yourself with no interaction with the person behind the screen, you may be making it harder than it needs to be because consuming content
Yeah, yeah,
will will not necessarily bring transformation. There's something about that human interaction where we're created to need each other. Growth doesn't happen in a vacuum by itself. We need to be around others, just like a flower needs the sun in order to grow. Each one of us need people. And so if you're building your business by your own, behind a screen, just consuming content, I would say you may need to think differently in order to really thrive in your business. Because even though you're consuming content, if you're building your business behind a screen, you may be making it harder than it needs to be. And you may be missing the secret ingredient of moving forward in life and in your business, which is accountability. Somebody that knows what you're working on, and they could say, "Hey, Chris, last week we talked about this, and you said you were going to do this. How is that going?" Because information isn't enough. We have to
Right.
take action. Taking action is the difference maker.
Man, that is so good. I can already think of many people that comes to mind. I had the conversation. They're like, "Help me." I'm like, "Do it." But they're like, "No, I want to still, I'm shy, I'm introverted." I'm like, "No, those are labels that the culture has taught you to put on yourself to make it as an excuse." I'm like, "No, bro, like you're not an introvert." I mean, yeah, maybe you are, but like you can't use that as an excuse to not serve people and then complain to me the business is not working, right? That's such a great tip. Yeah, what you're saying.
Well, my mentor I was on a phone call with earlier today, and he said this phrase. He said, "If we do what we've always done, we're going to get what we've always gotten." So I would say if you are satisfied with your current level of fruitfulness or income or whatever it is you fill in the blank, then I'd say okay. But if it gets to a point where that's no longer working for you, we're probably going to have to think differently, therefore do differently in order to get different results. Because Albert Einstein, I think it was, it said something like, if we do the same thing over and over and expect different results, we might be insane. And I know none of us are insane. So it reminds
Correct.
me of that.
That is so good. And that also reminds me of like, it was a phrase I heard. It's like for you to ascend and elevate, like you have to let go of the baggages from like the floor below. And that may be cultural things, that may be mindset things. For me, it was a lot around money, a lot about internal beliefs of identity of how I'm operating. And where I'm going now is really, yeah, just learn to let go of that and trying to like grasp onto that next thing. But wow, what you said was very well put.
Unpack that more. Like that, what you just said could be an entire podcast itself. I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, sure. So letting go, that's a good that is a good point. Isn't that so funny? I say it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was a good point.
It's like what I heard you saying is you have to give up in order to go up. You have to let go of what
That's
you've
right.
been holding on to in order to go to the next level.
Yeah. People may not enjoy this, but I'm just gonna do it because it's part
Yeah,
of
please
me.
do.
Yeah, Bible passage comes up to mind, and it's a passage where it says, "You cannot put old wine into new wineskin, and like old cloth onto I mean, yeah, onto a new cloth because it's just going to destroy, right?" And in this season of my life, God is saying you need to let go of a lot of things, like 90% of like how you're thinking about money, how you think it's like you know you cannot make a lot of money or things about how you're operating of that nature. And God's saying, rather than looking at the past experience, and I'll put it more concretely, it's like if you're thinking about anxiety, if you're anxious, if you're a business owner that's running out of uh, energy of anxiousness and like being frustrated, you're what the Bible is saying is like you need to let go of that older self and look on towards hope, look on towards anticipating what if you could not fail of the things that you're doing. What kind of actions would you take in your business, right? And what that turns around is like the other side of the coin is like it's now talking about hope, faith, and faith to see that of the things that you cannot see, but going step by step and trying to achieve that exact that goal. And so
That's good.
yeah, I had a season of my life in the last 3 months, and financially, I'm gonna say it upright, like we're not in the best position. It's not, but between our relationship between my wife and I, over our finances, over our children, how we speak words to each other, it has been the greatest up to this point. And so it's funny how like when we're letting go, like the worldly sense, like we're in lack, but in a spiritual sense, there's so much peace and like a direction to be like, no, I'm going to reveal to you where you need to go. And so we're just stepping in faith. So,
Man,
but for those people that are listening, yeah, whatever that you're tugging with, maybe some of the areas you do need to let go to let God and let Him be able to say, this is your next step.
man, that's solid. I'm glad you shared that because my question was going to be, what would you say to somebody out there that resonates with you on that? And yet, I think you just gave some gold on that one.
Hmm. So in terms of like what, sorry, say that.
You shared a little bit on it, so you answered it before I asked even, and yet I'd like to give you the opportunity if there's somebody out there that's in a similar situation, meaning that they too find themselves maybe in not the best place financially they've ever been, but they know without a doubt that they're taking steps and following Jesus's direction for their life, where they have that inner confidence, but maybe the bank account's not there with their faith. What would you say to them?
Hmm. That's a good question. And what I would say to them, if it's like another person that's like me, that are stepping out in faith, bank account is not there. One of the greatest lessons I took away actually a couple of days back was, okay, so this I'm gonna try it out. I'm telling myself, I'm like, yes, you gotta do this webinar, and I've tried a couple of webinars. You gotta try this new thing because you need to make money. So the focus is about making the money. The focus is about getting that next transaction done. But what I've realized was if it's that, it's a bad way of thinking because let's say I did the webinar, only 3 people showed up and nobody bought. And that out of my standards is a failure, right? I get discouraged. But the stress piles on. I still need to make money because money is my focus. But what I've come to realize is if you focus on growth, rather than if you say like 3 people showed up, but nobody bought, rather than saying, oh, I didn't make any money, what you're going to end up saying is, I've improved in my communications today. And next time I'm going to even get better because you know what you're doing right now and then. Maybe it's selling a product or selling your service. Like that's the thing that you need to continually to do in order to grow your business. For me as a coach and a consultant is to host these virtual events. And I was so defeated. I'm like, when only 3 people came and like nobody bought, I'm like, maybe this is not for me. And I just focused on the money, money, money. And I kept on like creeping back to a hermit when God's message spoke and the wisdom came upon. It's like, don't focus on money, like focus on what you've improved this time. And I think it's saying like all works. If it's not working for you, it's working on you. I think Myron says that.
There's profit in all labor, is what the
Labor.
Bible says. So I would
Yeah.
agree, all work works. I'm gonna make up something right now. I'm gonna call it the postcard principle. The postcard principle. What is that? This is what it is. So, working with agents that are launching their real estate business or looking to grow their real estate business, one of the strategies in marketing is sending out a postcard.
Oh,
Here's the postcard principle: don't just send out a postcard one time. That's going to get you some results if you just send out a postcard. The play for postcards is this: where it gets good, where you get the results you want, is not sending out the postcard one time. It's sending out the postcard every month, month after month after month after month. Why am I sharing that? Put that principle, the postcard principle, over on a webinar. You put that webinar on repeat where you're running that play every week for the next 12 months. Do that. And let's circle back 12 months from now and talk about the results. Because I
that'll be
bet it's going to be drastically different than just doing a one time event. You see what I'm saying with that?
yeah, that's for sure. And consistency is one thing I'm not good at. I'm gonna be honest. And I think now is down like I have to make a decision. Like, yes, just put in the work, put your head down, just repeat. And yeah, I'll try that. It should be exciting to circle back in a couple months' time to see what
May
has
I
resulted.
coach you a little bit on what you just said?
Yes, please.
You said I am not consistent,
Hmm.
right? So whenever we say I am, that's going to be two things: how we define ourselves,
Right.
and then what tracks us down and finds us.
Mm.
So would you agree that saying I am not consistent could be holding you back from the very thing you desire most in your life.
I would say yes. That's like 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what would be a more powerful statement that speaks into the plan and purpose that God has in your life
Mm.
versus hanging onto that old suitcase?
Yeah. Let's throw that away and let's say I'm learning to be I'm learning to show up consistent to I'm learning yeah, I'm gonna say I'm learning to figure out how to show up consistent every week.
Good for you on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's nice. Say that again.
Learning to figure out how to show up consistently every week
There we
for
go.
the people that I'm serving.
That's so
Thanks
good.
for that. Yeah, that's
Yeah, my
great.
pleasure. And sometimes we could just go right to the opposite.
Right, right, right.
I am consistent.
Mm,
Man, and it's not like sloppy name it, claim it, slap it, grab it, where we're running around praying for pink
yeah, yeah.
Cadillacs to fall from the sky. I'm not
Right.
talking that at all,
No, no,
but I'm
no.
talking about speaking into what I believe God is sharing with me
Mm,
in order to become the type of person who does the thing.
mm,
Because we know the people that are really accomplishing things that are changing the world, they are consistent, right?
that's right. Yeah. I'm gonna say I am consistent. It feels
Man, that's
awkward at
powerful.
this moment, but I'm gonna continue to say that.
Man, that's powerful. Good for
Yeah,
you on that one, man.
yeah.
Yep.
Wow, thank you. That's so funny. I was like, that's good. That's good. Thank you,
Thanks for
Chris.
being open to that. Well, and that's part of being coachable, right?
Right, right.
So good for you for being coachable. We have the same coaches we've said a lot. So you're showing up in a coachable way, and that's important for all of us because we could have an incredible coach. It's fascinating. Two people could have the same coach, and yet one person could accomplish everything they set out to desire by hiring that coach, and
Mm,
the other person could write a 1-star review for the
mm.
same coach, meaning they didn't get what they signed up for. What's the difference?
Yeah, what's the
Are we
difference?
coachable? How am I choosing to show up? So I'm not surprised at all that
Mm,
you're open to some coaching. Both of
mm.
us are coachable.
Yeah, that you know what you said, it's a super important point because some people are not looking for coaching. They may be skeptical and they may worry about money, but it's like they don't believe in themselves to be the thing of the end result. And so I saw myself even before joining Omar's program as somebody who was going to become an authority figure in the coaching space. And did I look like it? Did I sound like it? No. But because my belief was there, and I think that's exactly to your point there.
Hmm. Man, that's
Yeah.
solid. It's a good point. So with your webinar, what's the result you want to help people get on your webinar?
I would say helping them create their first six-figure day. And how I'm leading that is I'm actually sharing content journey of saying like one of the gaps, and I'm talking about a huge gap in my business, is I didn't incorporate speed. I was just like the other coaches, like I'm gonna help you build a business, 6 figure, 7 figure, over a course of a year. But mine was like, I do that in the course of a day. And I was like, what? Like that's even possible? And it's like, it is possible. So now I'm like, the result that I want to help people create is be able to create a 6 figure day in their business. And so I'm gonna start with myself with my business, inviting people along the journey, and then see how that flourishes. Because there's a lot of principles, a lot of concepts that I know in terms of like studying computer science, the back end of business, like the funnels and all that stuff. But now it just lands on myself to build this out so that, I mean, imagine 6 figure day in a business. That's a life skill. And if you can have that, it's like you've unlocked the game. So that's I'm on that journey now. So that's who I'm hoping to. No, I'm not gonna use hope. That's who I am going to serve.
That's good. How come you corrected yourself?
Because hope is saying you're giving an option of like I hope it works out. But I know in my deep soul what I have in terms of helping people, coaching people. I know I can bring the best out. And my track record of teaching, I've done a lot of athletics teaching too, as well, with like working with athletes with various sports. Whenever I joined the team as a head coach, we would always end up in a championship. And so I've come to accept teaching. I used to brush it off, but now I've come to accept I am a great coach and a teacher who knows how to analyze things very well and also provide creativity. Yeah.
You're the coach of champions, it sounds like.
Oh, that's so well said. I'm gonna take that, Chris. Coach of champions. That's exactly what I call them. I call them my champions too. Wow. I never linked two together.
Coach of
Oh, that is so good. I'm gonna write that down.
three C's. Man.
Coach of Champions Challenge. Thank you,
What's your
Chris.
next challenge?
It's gonna happen actually next week. I was gonna do one before April starts. So I'm like, I'm gonna start putting out ads and then just see where that goes. But the
Okay.
messaging is this: are you struggling with like content, but also like the financials of like feeling overwhelmed and analysis paralysis? And then sort of go there.
Okay. Good
Wow,
for
this is
you.
a coaching call right now. So thank you.
Yeah. That's good. Man. What do you get out of today's conversation? What's standing out to you?
Yeah, what stands out is partnerships is really important. And I was at the beginning of my journey into Omar's program, I was reluctant to talk to other people because I was still coming out with a poor mindset of like, I'm in it for myself and I'm just gonna me succeed only, right? But even as this is coming to fruition, I'm realizing there's so much cross pollination. Can I use that terminology? Cross pollination that happens.
Yeah.
And the element of that is basically not opening up. And because now I am opening up and I am being coachable, like I'm learning 2, 3 things from you just in the last 5 minutes, which is like boom, right? And yesterday I was spending about 5 hours with ChatGPT trying to figure out the right name. But like there's something about connectedness when you work with a colleague or a friend. But even more so, we were talking about like, and so that's one thing I take away: the importance of relationships and how that helps you flourish your business. Yeah. And
That's good.
yeah.
I mean, Genesis, right? Right in the beginning. I love it. Book of Genesis. So, like,
Mm.
if we never move to Exodus or any of the other books, we're right in Genesis. And yet we think back to God's creation. He created everything and then he created us uniquely in his image. And then the next thing he said, it's not good for man to be alone. So
That's right.
what if it's true? We're better together. It's not good for
Mm.
us to build on our own. Like I think we're actually designed on the inside to collaborate together, to work better, to be stronger together, to go further faster together. Like we actually need each other.
Mm.
It's amazing. It's almost like God had an idea and a plan and he knew what we needed right in the beginning. Who'd ever thought?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Amazing conversation.
man. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time today.